Police are investigating a fatal shooting in Parkdale. A man was shot to death inside an apartment early this morning. Good afternoon. The victim was pronounced dead there on the scene after the violence spilled out onto the apartment balcony.
Residents say they are shocked and frightened by what happened as police try to track down those responsible. CTV's John Musselman has been following the investigation and joins us live now with more. John.
Well, Nathan, we can tell you that police are still on the scene here. They're gathering evidence inside the building, but you're right. We have very limited details right now about what happened. All we do know is that a man appears to be shot dead on the 4th floor. The body of a man was removed from this Parkdale apartment building today. Police say there were reports of gunshots in the building around midnight. When police arrived, they entered a 4th floor unit. They found a man on the balcony. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The building is located at 145 Jameson Avenue and King Street West. There are few details being released by investigators. We don't know the name or age of the victim. We also don't know if he was a tenant or if he was visiting the building. Forensic officers spent the morning combing the unit for any evidence. They also were brushing the front door for any fingerprints. A tenant who lives on the 5th floor says she heard some noises around midnight, but she had no idea it was gunshots. The motive for the shooting is unknown at this time. And we still haven't heard if homicide detectives will be coming here to the scene again today to talk to some of the neighbors. Some of the tenants I spoke to say they didn't hear from police yet either, so it's not clear if a canvass has happened throughout the entire building. We did speak to a woman who says that she lives in the unit where this happened, but she wasn't there at the time, so we're still trying to clarify some of the information at this homicide scene. Reporting live, I'm John Musselman. I'll send it back to you.
All right, thank you, John. Peel Police's Homicide and Missing Persons Bureaus announced major rewards in a pair of cold cases.
They're hoping the cash incentive will lead to breakthroughs in 2 homicide investigations. CTV's Janice Golding has been following this, and she joins us live with those details. Janice.
Hi, Michelle. Yes, as you've mentioned, Peel Regional Police have announced new substantial rewards in the hopes that the public will come forward to help them solve 2 unsolved murder cases. Now, 5 years ago today, Jacqueline Gore was killed in the area of Torbram Road and Drew Road in Mississauga. The 24-year-old was standing outside a bar when she was shot on July 8, 2019. Police say Gore was not the intended target. Meanwhile, more recently, 19-year-old Ranella Richards was shot and killed outside an event space in the Dixie and Eglinton area. It was New Year's Eve 2023. Again, police say the young woman was an innocent bystander. In an attempt to encourage those who have information about the shootings to speak up, Peel Police have now announced a massive increase in the rewards in these cases from $25,000 to $100,000. Those rewards are for information that leads to the identity and arrests of those responsible.
We have no reason to believe that Renelia or Jacqueline were anything but innocent victims of senseless gun violence. Such acts will not be tolerated by our service, and we're committed to using every resource possible to identify those responsible.
We can take all the traditional means in our investigative avenues to solve these crimes, but what we know is that without having influence and help from the community in providing us additional information, a lot of the times we can't just rely on those traditional means. We need the community to help, and that's what we're seeking in this case, in both of these cases.
Now, anyone with any information is, of course, asked to contact the Homicide and Missing Persons Unit here in Peel Region, or if you want to remain anonymous, reach out to Crime Stoppers. Reporting live, I'm Janice Golding. Now back to Nathan.
All right, thank you, Janice. 3 people have been arrested in connection with 2 carjackings in Mississauga. The first incident happened in a parking lot at Heartland Town Centre last Wednesday. A woman who was with her child at the time had her car stolen. The second incident happened the next day near Winston Churchill and Burnhamthorpe. Police say 3 people who they believe were planning to steal another car were arrested on Friday. Mackie Lashano and Deshaun Sadler, both 18-year-olds, as well as a 14-year-old boy, are facing charges in connection with the vehicle thefts.
The sex assault case against billionaire Frank Stronach was in court for the first time today.
The 91-year-old is accused of sexually assaulting 10 complainants dating as far back as the 1970s. And CTV's John Woodward has been following the case and joins us live with more details. John.
Frank Stronach was not required to show up to his morning court appearance here in Brampton, and he chose not to, his lawyer appearing virtually, and thus began a new legal journey for the 91-year-old billionaire. The appearance happened this morning at 9 at the Brampton courthouse. That was the first time Stronach has had to speak in court to the 13 charges relating to an alleged series of sexual assaults that started, according to the counts, in the 1970s and allegedly continued to February of this year. The judge put in place a publication ban on the evidence that was discussed this morning, but we can tell you that the documents show 10 victims across 13 different counts. 7 counts are in Toronto, 1 each in Scarborough, Central York and Gormley, and 2 in Aurora, which is the headquarters of Magna International, the massive auto parts conglomerate that was started by Stronach. That company has said it has no knowledge of the allegations, and Stronach himself sent a statement saying, in many free and democratic societies, the identities of both the accuser and the accused are protected when the police initiate a charge against a citizen. This is not the case in Canada. Frank Stronach, like all Canadians, values the time-honored legal principle that a person is innocent until proven guilty. However, unlike most Canadians, he faces the reputational damage which constant media attention attracts. Although gratified by the many expressions of support he has received, we ask that the public respect the fundamental precept that Mr. Stronach remains innocent of any wrongdoing and that he will respond to these allegations in a fair and public court of law. And that is the process that is beginning right here in Brampton, where we expect the criminal courts to treat Stronach the same, no matter whether he is an average citizen or a billionaire. Reporting live from Brampton Courts, I'm John Woodward. Back to you.
Thank you, John. A motorcyclist suffered life-threatening injuries in a crash in Mississauga. It happened just before 7 p.m. yesterday on the Derry Road ramp to the northbound 410. Police say the motorcycle was the only vehicle involved. The cause of the crash is under investigation.
Still to come, the Raptors have re-signed 2 prominent players to multi-year contracts. We'll have more on the deals for Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel Quickly a little later in the show. LCBO workers' strike has entered a 4th day with no end in sight.
Now the Premier is promoting other options for Ontarians to purchase alcohol amid the ongoing labor dispute. CTV's Raheem Ladani has been following this story closely. He joins us live with the latest. Raheem.
Michelle and Nathan, we're here at an LCBO licensee service center in Mississauga, and about a few minutes ago, there were actually workers who crossed the picket line, and they were met with chants of shame by the striking workers behind me. These workers are standing at the entrance to try to put pressure on some of the delivery trucks who are going to be picking up product as this strike enters its 4th day. Now, earlier today, there was actually another picket line set up at an LCBO retail store about 10-15 minutes away, but they decided to collapse that and join forces here to put more pressure on the government. Thousands of LCBO workers walked off the job last Friday after negotiations between the employer and union broke down. Now this morning, the province appears to be using a new tactic to pressure employees. The Premier actually released a video boasting about ways Ontarians can still buy alcohol during the LCBO strike. It's an interactive map showcasing 2,300 locations other than the LCBO where people can buy beer, wine, cider, and spirits. Take a listen.
LCBO workers are on strike. There's still plenty of options for you to buy beer, wine, cider, coolers, and even spirits, including products made right here in Ontario. We've created this handy new map that shows what stores are open and what they sell.
Now, you heard in that video the Premier talk about a number of different options other than the LCBO. That's one of the fears of these striking workers. They say that by expanding alcohol sales in convenience stores and grocery stores, that there's a fear of job loss. And 2 of the other main negotiating sticking points is also better wages and full-time positions. Reporting live, I'm Raheem Ladani. Nathan, I'll send it back to you.
All right, thank you, Raheem. Beginning today, the TTC is modifying bus replacement service on Spadina in an effort to reduce travel times. The 510 buses will no longer run on Spadina between Front and Queens Quay from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. on weekdays. Buses will instead travel along Front Street and loop around Blue Jays Way back to Spadina Station. The TTC says since the bus replacement service has been implemented, travel times have more than tripled to over an hour because of congestion. Buses are replacing streetcars south of Bloor until the end of the year in order to accommodate several upgrades, including critical track work.
Another milestone has been reached in the Portland's construction project. The city is removing a man-made dam called the North Plug in order to join the Don River to Lake Ontario. The new channel is part of a revitalization effort to clean up the former industrial area. The city has built wetlands in order to naturally filter water from the Don River before it reaches the lake. The wetlands is also part of a bigger parkland and development, which will eventually see residential buildings in this new neighborhood.
We have more news in a moment, but first, here's a live look at the city this afternoon. A mix of sun and cloud, hot, hazy, and humid on this Monday. And there's also a heat warning in effect. Jessica Smith is here with a look at the current conditions. Already a heat warning, Jess.
It is toasty. We've reached that heat warning criteria for today and tomorrow, and then a pretty drastic change is going to take place as we hit the middle of the week. But for now, right around the Golden Horseshoe, it is hot. We're looking at temperatures well into the 30s, humidex values into that mid to upper 30 range. Right now, for example, we're at 26 here in the city. It feels like 32, a southerly wind just adding to all that stickiness, that humidity when you walk out the door. And we're into the upper 20s for the most part right across southern Ontario with those humidex values already into the 30s, and it only gets warmer as we head into the second half of the day. There's not a lot going on in the way of any active weather right now. A few scattered showers out towards those eastern shorelines of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. But as we head in towards our Tuesday night into our Wednesday, we are looking at a significant amount of rain. The leftovers of Tropical Storm Beryl are going to start to make their way into southern Ontario. It loses a lot of its steam because we don't have warm ocean waters to stir things up, quite literally, but it doesn't mean we aren't going to be impacted pretty significantly. Coming up, your full forecast right now. Back to Michelle and Nathan.
Thank you, Jess. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is in Washington, D.C. ahead of a critical NATO summit. The 32 NATO member countries are set to mark the alliance's 75th anniversary Tuesday. Trudeau will attend a dinner at the White House hosted by U.S. President Joe Biden. The Prime Minister is also expected to face tough questions from allies about Canada's defense spending. CTV's Judy Trin is traveling with the Prime Minister, and she joins us live now from Washington. Judy, great to have you with us. We know allies want Canada to increase defense spending. Is there any movement expected on this issue?
We asked that question directed to the Prime Minister's office, and they did not give us much of a commitment. But what they will have said is that they are committed to getting there, but they have yet to develop a plan. And that's what allies have been upset and frustrated with Canada about. Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO UN, the NATO Secretary General, has basically said that Canada needs to show a plan of getting 2%, and it hasn't done that. A group of U.S. bipartisan senators have criticized Canada in the same way. Where we are now, Michelle, is at 1.37% of GDP. That's how much Canada is spending on its military budget annually, and that's nowhere near the target. There is a goal in place to hit 1.76 by 2030. But that's still off the mark at a time when other nations are increasing their support of NATO. Of 32 countries in this military alliance, Michelle, 23 of them are at 2% or above. Poland is at 4%. Canada at the bottom. We're fifth lowest.
Oh, that is interesting. Meanwhile, Judy, Trudeau is expected to offer strong support for Ukraine during this NATO summit. Maybe you could bring us up to speed. Where do things stand in terms of Canada's involvement in that conflict?
Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's president, will be joining NATO partners at this summit. He will have a pride of spot, I guess, because he is clamoring for a seat at the table. And this is something that Justin Trudeau has been fully committed to and supportive. He's been very strong and unequivocal in saying that Ukraine deserves to be at the table and that Canada will continue supporting Ukraine. Since the war against Vladimir Putin began, since that invasion in 2022, Canada has provided $4 billion in military assistance to Ukraine. That doesn't include $12 billion in loans to keep the Ukraine economy afloat. Now, of the military spending, we are helping Ukraine buy anti-tank missiles. We are sending Leopard tanks to them. But one thing we are also doing is increasing their ammunition supplies. Our production lines citizens in Canada are unable to produce that amount that is needed. So what we've done is we've actually gone to the Czech Republic, bought a lot of ammunition and donated it to Ukraine. So Canada has shown support, and when it comes to military assistance to NATO partners, Canada always points to Ukraine, saying, look what we've done here in Ukraine. We're punching above our weight. And meanwhile, NATO alliance partners say, well, you know, we're also contributing to Ukraine. We need you to increase your defense spending.
CTV's Judy Tran live for us in Washington, attending the NATO summit. Thank you so much, Judy. Appreciate your coverage.
You're welcome, Michelle.
Meanwhile, Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister is in London today, meeting with her new British counterpart.
We have lots to do together. Definitely to have a strong relationship between Canada and UK, which is a historic one, which we can completely deepen.
Mélanie Joly sat down with new British Foreign Secretary David Lammy. The visit comes days after the UK's Labour Party won a landslide in the recent general election. Joly was Lammy's first official visit since he became Foreign Secretary.
France's political future is in limbo after a stunning turn of events in the second round of the country's parliamentary election yesterday. The left-wing alliance defeated the far right but failed to secure a majority, leaving parliament deadlocked.
Now, Macron cannot call fresh elections until a year has elapsed after this one. So we could very well see a year where France is in a position of political stalemate.
Marine Le Pen's far-right party won the first round of voting and was projected to win the second as well, but her party came third behind the left and President Emmanuel Macron's centrist party. The results are a blow to Macron, who called the snap election with the hope of clarifying France's political landscape.
Russia missile attacks killed at least 36 people across Ukraine today. Officials say it was the deadliest airstrike in months. Kyiv's main children's hospital was badly damaged in the rare daylight attack. 50 civilian buildings were damaged in the capital, 2 central cities and 2 cities in the east. They included residential buildings, a business center, and 2 medical facilities. Ukrainian air defenses say they downed 30 of the 38 incoming missiles. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his country will retaliate and called on Western allies to give a firm response to the attack.
In the Middle East, Israeli forces are advancing deeper into Gaza City. Thousands of Palestinians fled the territory's largest city after Israel issued a new evacuation order on the weekend. There were additional orders to leave today in other neighborhoods. The Israeli military said it had intelligence showing that militants were in the area and called on residents to head south to the city of Deir al-Balah. But Palestinians say nowhere feels safe. Most of the territory's population of 2.3 million has been displaced, often multiple times.
Hurricane Beryl lashed Texas with strong winds and heavy rain today as it moved inland. The Category 1 storm made landfall near the coastal town of Matagorda today, early this morning. It has left thousands of homes and businesses in the state without power and forced the closure of oil ports and the cancellation of hundreds of flights. The National Hurricane Center says the coast is also being pounded with dangerous storm surges. It has now been downgraded to a tropical storm and is expected to weaken throughout the day. Jess?
And as it weakens, it will track its way towards Ontario. Now, the timing of this is likely as we get through overnight Tuesday into our Wednesday, and then we are looking at a potentially significant amount of rain. Of course, it loses a lot of its power once it makes its way over land, but by the time, again, we get to the end of the week, this pushes into Quebec, potentially causing some flooding. We're looking at the likelihood of at least 20 millimeters as we head in towards Wednesday for us here in the GTA. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast for what we can expect here at home as we lead up towards Wednesday and the potential of Beryl making its way into Ontario.
Canada's men's soccer team is preparing for their semi-final match tomorrow at the Copa America tournament. Canada will take on reigning Copa and world champions Argentina. They booked their spot in the semi-final after beating Venezuela on penalties Friday night. Canada lost 2-0 to Argentina in the group stage, but has allowed just 1 goal in 3 matches since then. And for more on the big match, we're joined live now by CTV's Scott Hurst. Scott, It was a tremendous win for Canada over Venezuela. What does this mean for Canadian men's soccer?
At the very least, Nathan, it's been really exciting to watch all these games and exciting to see Canada do so well against some traditional soccer powerhouses. And no doubt this is getting a lot of Canadians jumping on the bandwagon as the men's program continues to set the bar higher and higher with each win. But you can bet it's also putting some of these traditional powerhouse teams, particularly the Latin American ones right now and the South American teams, on notice that this is a program on the rise. Currently, Canada just squeaking into the top 50 of the world rankings. So they're going up against Argentina next, and they are, of course, as you mentioned, the reigning Copa and World Cup champions and the #1 team in the world. Here's more from Ishmael Kone, one of the heroes from that Friday night game and that clinching penalty kick goal that won it for Canada.
I've been lucky in my life. I don't stress. Like, I think it's a very good gift from God. I don't stress. I don't overthink stuff. And I just been waiting for moments like this since I was a kid, you know. I just wanted to be on stages like this, play those sort of games. So, you know, it was a gift. So I knew when the moment come, I just have to step up for it, you know. And I knew my team had my back, whatever happened. So I was just, you know, come to take the penalty, you know. So I went there, I shot it, and I knew I was going to score.
And Nathan, if you want more proof that this hockey nation is really jumping on board right now, well, after the game, after that big win on Friday, who was in the dressing room giving the team a motivational speech and celebrating with them? None other than Sidney Crosby.
Right, hockey, basketball, soccer, we're a nation of many things.
You bet. Yeah.
So Team Canada is up against the best of the best Tuesday with the best player. What can we expect?
Yeah, congratulations on winning the quarterfinals. Now you get to go up against the best team in the nation, Argentina, with the best player on the planet in Lionel Messi, a generational player, and an Argentinian team that's done quite well in this tournament, as you mentioned in the lead up to me, that they had already played Argentina. That was the opening match of this tournament, and Argentina did win that match 2-0, although Canada did have some impressive moments in that game, including goalie Maxime Crépeau having some dynamite saves, particularly against Lionel Messi. So, you know, they won this quarterfinal. That set a new high watermark for the men's program. Now they've reached the semifinals of the Copa America for a team that had never even made it to the Copa America tournament before. So this is quite another high bar for Team Canada, but they will be in tough for sure against the best team in the world on Tuesday in New Jersey. And this is at a stadium that fits more than 80,000 people, typically a football stadium, American, Canadian style football. That's what I mean, not the classic soccer football, but for, you know, where the New York Giants and the New York Jets play. So 80,000 plus, and you can bet as many of these Latin American teams do, the fans travel well. It'll be dominated by either Messi fans or Argentina fans, and so hopefully the few Canadian fans that will be there can be loud, but Canada's getting used to playing into these somewhat hostile environments, Nathan.
Yeah, they've done well so far. CTV's Scott Hurst on Copa America. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nathan.
All right, can't wait for the game, and also let's talk about the forecast here as well. It's going to be a hot one. Go ahead.
It's hot. I'm just thinking, you know, it's enough to inspire you to get out, play some soccer. Right. But boy, if you're doing that today, you have to take precautions because we're into the 30s, and then you add the humidity, and you could feel it early this morning.
I'm an early riser, and I was out early this morning, and it was already hot. And this is before 7 a.m. So we're holding on to this heat for the next 2 days, and then we switch pretty dramatically as we head in towards Wednesday as the leftovers of Beryl make its way in towards us. By no means will it be as intense as it has been for the Caribbean, for parts of the U.S., but we are looking at a potentially pretty significant amount of rain. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm. Injury lawyers you don't pay unless they win. Now, we've seen a decent amount of sunshine to get the day started. A few clouds will come in here and there, but even with a little bit of cloud cover, we still have a really high UV index. So don't let the little bit of cloud fool you. You still need sun protection, hydration, because it's not providing much in the way of relief from all those really strong UV rays. But it is hot. We're at 26. It already feels like 32, and it only gets warmer as we head throughout the day. And almost everybody, with the exception of extreme northern Ontario, holding on to a decent amount of heat and a more southerly flow to the winds. We have that heat warning in place right around the Golden Horseshoe. The highs in the 30s, the lows in the 20s for today and for tomorrow. Again, we're looking at a high around 30. It'll feel like 36. Almost everybody around 30 degrees today, with the exception of Owen Sound, Parry Sound, Orillia, Bancroft, and Kingston. But it's still really hot. They still have heat warning criteria levels as we kind of head through the next couple of days, almost anyways. As we head into this evening, right around the Golden Horseshoe, really warm once again into the 20s, and we should be around 17. So we're cloudy for today, maybe a few sprinkles of showers tomorrow. But as we head in towards Wednesdays, when we see the leftovers of Tropical Storm Beryl make its way towards us. For now, though, relatively clear, a few light clouds. We'll see some light showers into the start of the day tomorrow. But you can see that system start to cook its way up as it channels its way towards us, this conveyor belt of moisture. Temperature-wise, today it's hot, it's humid. We'll see some peaks of sun, but mostly just a ton of cloud cover throughout the day. As we get in towards the day tomorrow, we watch for the chance of maybe a few scattered showers early on in the day. Another round likely in the GTA kind of into the mid-afternoon, and then we watch for more steady rain to come in towards the evening. Overnight, it gets really intense. The yellows, oranges, the thunderstorms, it's a lot of rain, especially into that southwestern corner and then parts of eastern Ontario. For the GTA, the drive into work is going to be a challenge. We are looking at a significant amount of rain as we head in towards kind of the late to mid-morning. Around the lunch hour, things start to taper off a little bit, but we have the potential for some flash flooding, some urban flooding, because you have that significant downpour that happens so quickly. As we head in towards, again, our Tuesday, really warm again. We're still in that heat warning criteria for the high and the low. The chance of maybe a scattered shower, really heavy rain, and a significant temperature drop. We go from 31 down to 23 as we head in towards Wednesday with this system the leftovers of Beryl making its way through. It remains cooler as we head in towards Thursday, still in the 20s, but cooler than we should be. And then we start to rebound as we head in towards the end of the week and the weekend. But all eyes on Wednesday, well, Tuesday because of the soccer game, Wednesday because of the rain. But for now, Michelle, Nathan, I'll send things back to you guys.
Thank you, Jess. The Raptors have inked two of their young stars to multi-year contracts.
The team is hoping Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel Quickly will serve as the core for success in the future. CTV's Sean Leathong has been following the signings and joined us live now with more. This is good news for Raptor fans.
It has to be, Nathan and Michelle, because what they're saying, the tagline they had today is "the future is now." Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel Quickly signing both 5-year contract extensions. The terms aren't exactly made available by the team, but reports say the Scotty Barnes deal could be worth as high as $270 million. Emmanuel Quickly, $175 million when those extensions do kick in. So it is big money for some very young players. Now, we talk about Scotty Barnes. The Raptors, of course, drafting him back in 2021. He was the Rookie of the Year after that. Last year, his third season in the league, he made the All-Star team for his first time ever playing in an All-Star game, but he did deal with an injury that prematurely ended his season. So the Raptors are hoping he'll regain that form and be able to lead this team to be the guy, as they put it, moving forward. Emmanuel Quickly, a guard who was acquired in a trade last December from the New York Knicks, played exceedingly well for the Toronto Raptors and is a great teammate, as said by Scotty Barnes, someone who shares the ball well, and he actually talked about how they like playing video games together, because this unit does seem to be very close. But Quickly is a player who they are expecting to also take a big step up. Him just being 25 years of age now, going to be paid a lot of money to do so. So they both talked about what it means to take that step forward in their careers today. But first, we have Masai Ujiri coming up, talking about just what it was like last season, coming off a season where the team only won 25 games, and they want to build up from here.
It's been a tough year and a half, and I don't know, maybe that's partly my fault and partly things, coming at us in different ways, but it just wasn't us. Yeah, that's not who we are. That's not what I wanted to be.
I say rebuild, but I just want to win now. I feel like that's my mindset each and every single day. I want to win basketball games and rebuild this thing back to where it was. Try to get back to the top of the East.
No, excitement. When I'm done playing in my career, I want to say that I tried to meet every challenge head on. I didn't shy away from anything. You only get to play in the NBA one time in your career, so pressure is an opportunity for you to rise, and I'm looking forward to that opportunity.
One thing Masai Ujiri talked about today was having passion on the court. He says, you heard in that clip, that it just wasn't us last year. He says the product they've been putting on the court for the previous 10 years had fit what this team's identity is. He says last year wasn't it, but this year they are moving forward. So they are saying the future is now, and it starts today. The rebuild, and the Raptors are trying to look upward. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leathong. I'll send it back to you.
Love it. Thank you, Sean. And still to come on CTV News at noon, the dangers of a so-called digital pacifier. There's new data indicating exposing kids to digital devices too early can lead to issues later in life. We'll explain just ahead. New research outlines the downsides of giving young children a so-called digital pacifier. Researchers gave 265 parents in Nova Scotia a questionnaire 2 times, once in 2020 when their kids were around 3.5 years old, and again in 2021. The survey included questions about how parents used digital devices to manage tantrums. It found kids who got more time with devices in 2020 ended up with worse anger-related behaviors a year later, and a greater lack of self-regulation in general. For more, we're joined by CTV Science and Technology Specialist Dan Riskin. Dan, talk to us. This is interesting. Just how strong was the relationship between digital pacifiers at that first time point and then the number of tantrums those kids were having a year later?
Yeah, it was a huge correlation. And to give you a sense of the magnitude of it, you would expect that a kid who has a lot of meltdowns at that first time point is going to be a kid who has a lot of meltdowns at the second time point because, you know, they have personalities that sort of carry through time. But a stronger predictor of how many meltdowns they're going to have was the device use, was whether parents were giving that device over to kids. It was even stronger than the kid's own personality. It's like the device turns them into monsters. And the thinking is that when kids have a meltdown, a big part of that is how they learn about their emotions and they learn how to come out of it. And when you give them a digital device during a meltdown, they don't get the opportunity to calm down themselves. They have that done for them. And so they don't learn. And as a result, a year later, you've got a kid who's even less regulated than they were before.
Well, that is good to know. We all have concerns as parents about the effect of digital devices, and it's nice to have some science behind, you know, the effects. Let's switch gears a little bit. This next story is about rotator cuff surgery. It's a very common surgical procedure with a surprisingly high failure rate, but we might soon see a dramatic improvement because of all things snake teeth. Walk us through. How are snake teeth being used here? Yeah.
Yeah, fortunately, they're not putting snakes inside people's shoulders. So that would be a very weird experimental surgery, but they are inspired by the teeth of snakes. Pythons, when they grab an animal, their teeth are built so that the animal can't rip away. And what's happening with these rotator cuff surgeries is that the tendon is ripping away from the surgical site. It gets sutured into place and it tears. And so, inspired by these pythons, researchers have built a new kind of attachment that goes at the shoulder that's basically built like a bunch of tiny teeth of a python to hold the tendon in place better. And right now, the failure rate for that surgery, for a rotator cuff surgery, is around 20% for healthy young people. It's around 94% for elderly people. And their experiments with this using cadavers is that it doubles the strength of the suture. So their hope is that this will be used in people soon and that we'll see a huge improvement in the success rate for this really common surgery that hundreds of thousands of people across North America have every year.
Oh, fascinating how nature can inspire improvement in that way. Love it. Okay, now from snakes to something a lot cuter, puppies. Who doesn't love puppies? But you have data showing that just like having an actual human baby, sometimes having a puppy can be pretty hard on your mental health as well.
Yeah, and so the scientific literature has all kinds of data about postpartum depression with human babies and how it's hard on the parents and the emotions of that. But the fact that it's hard to have a puppy is completely absent from the scientific literature. It's all over social media. People talk about the puppy blues, but it's not in the scientific literature. So researchers, inspired by their social media feeds, went and did a study to see if this is real. And they surveyed a whole bunch of people who have puppies, and it is real. When you've got a puppy, it is you're exhausted. You're worried about your inadequacy as a dog owner. You have anxiety about how much time the puppy's taking. You're worried about whether you're raising the puppy to be a good dog or if it's going to turn out to be a bad dog. And the rate at which people have extreme anxiety about that puppy is on par with the rate at which people have extreme anxiety about their human babies. And so this really should just be very validating for people that having a puppy really is hard. But the good news is it does end. They turn into dogs, and people tend to forget how bad it was. So it turns into a good long-term relationship, even if the beginning is a little bumpy.
Oh, boy. Yep. It goes so quick. Blink of an eye. CTV's science and tech specialist, Dan Riskin, thanks so much.
Thanks, Michelle.
A unique mission came to an end this weekend for 4 NASA volunteers.
The crew spent more than a year studying what life on Mars might really be like. CTV's Christina Tenalia has that story.
Just ready to come out?
The crew of 4 emerged after 378 days in confinement. It felt like an out-of-this-world mission, but this team never left the ground.
It's actually just so wonderful to be able to say hello to you all.
Hello from Earth, as this was a mission to Mars simulation, a NASA first.
Wow, that went by quickly.
The quartet of volunteer crew members spent more than a year in this 3D printed 17,000 square foot facility, about the size of a hockey rink. It's an elaborate makeshift Mars environment at the Johnson Space Center in Houston.
And I really hope this helps us get that much closer to the reality of putting boots on Mars.
That reality means working out some challenges.
There's a lot of different problems to solve, and the only way to start solving them is through good simulation.
Retired astronaut and Colonel Chris Hadfield was the first Canadian to walk in space.
So if you're going to stay on Mars for extended periods, then you have to rethink how you do everything. Where does your food come from? What do you do when things break?
And that's what this crew did, carrying out experiments, growing vegetables, conducting simulated Mars walks, and gathering data that will help the space agency to prepare to return to the moon and Mars. NASA's last successful mission was the Perseverance rover. It landed on Mars' surface in February 2021. But humans have never touched the red planet.
Why go to Mars? Because it's possible.
And we'll sort of go when the technology gets good enough to make it reasonably safe. A little subset of us pushing the very edge of what's possible. That's always been what has turned history.
As for these simulated missions on Earth, NASA plans to carry out 2 more. And the space agency hopes for the real deal to send astronauts to Mars in the early 2030s. Christina Tenalia, CTV News, Toronto.
And still to come, a big morning for American stocks. They were up again and set to reach new heights. We'll have those details after this short break.
The Canada Revenue Agency sent out legal warnings to Canadians who may still be owing COVID loans.
After ruling many people ineligible for the payments, the tax agency is still trying to collect billions of dollars. CTV's Kamal Karamali has the details.
This is musician Patrick Massey in his element. It's a passion of love, not money, only getting paid for the odd gig. So when COVID struck, his career hit pause, and so did his income. He then applied for federal COVID benefits.
I realized I qualified for it, so I jumped on it.
But now the Canada Revenue Agency says he needs to pay back more than $27,000. It says Massey wasn't eligible for the benefits.
It just stresses me out, it's beyond belief.
Massey says the CRA asked him to prove he had a steady income back in 2019, an income that was lost when the pandemic hit. The problem is with multiple freelance jobs, he says the CRA is disputing what he earned as a self-employed individual, even though his local MP vouched for him, saying he has provided abundant evidence.
This has happened, by the way, to other constituents of mine who have work that is less regular, if you will.
The CRA now asking Massey to pay it all back.
So are you afraid of any legal repercussions? No, because where are they going to get the money from? I don't have any. You can't take blood from a stone, right?
The CRA began sending out legal warnings this month to Canadians who were not eligible for the COVID benefits but took the money anyways and haven't paid it back. The agency is now trying to retrieve $9.5 billion, including more than $5 billion from CERB and billions more from other benefits. Now, many Canadians are fighting back against the CRA's demands for repayment, which may be a losing cause.
It can garnish wages. It can take away refunds that were otherwise entitled to you. It can take away your GST credit or any kind of other credit you're getting. It could seize assets of yours.
Tax lawyers say people can still go to a federal court to fight the CRA's decision. Meanwhile, the Canada Revenue Agency says it remains committed to being flexible with these repayments.
A major company in Hollywood is getting even bigger. Paramount has announced a merger with production company Skydance. The new combined company is valued at around $28 billion. Skydance helped produce several of Paramount's biggest hits, such as Top Gun: Maverick and several installments in the Mission Impossible franchise. Paramount says the deal is a way to fortify the company in the face of a changing industry.
In business news, U.S. stocks hit a new record today.
Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg has the latest.
Hello there. Here are your business headlines. U.S. stocks rose in morning trading, with the S&P 500 pushing into new record territory. The big banks start reporting earnings on Friday, and analysts have been increasing their earnings estimates. Toronto shares were down slightly, held back by energy and materials. Oil prices were lower, with West Texas Intermediate crude dropping below $83 US a barrel. There is optimism that ceasefire talks in Gaza will lead to an end to violence, possibly cutting supply risk in the Middle East. Meanwhile, Hurricane Beryl has caused less damage to oil installations in the Gulf of Mexico than had been feared. And finally, Americans are traveling in huge numbers, inspired by slightly lower prices for hotel rooms and airfares. For the first time, more than 3 million people passed through U.S. airport security yesterday. Associated Press says that hotel rooms in the United States dropped about 1.2% in price in the year to May. U.S. airlines are expecting a summer of full planes. That's the latest in business. I'm Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg.
Mediators are now working to help reach a deal after a planned strike at BC ports did not proceed. 600 ship and dock foremen could have begun a 72-hour walkout today, but Canada's Industrial Relations Board found the strike notice was in violation of the Labour Code. It said the union failed to bargain in good faith and ordered it to rescind the notice. The strike was called to protest issues such as changes to overtime, automation, and retirement benefits.
Coming up, a mother-daughter duo inspiring each other to succeed. We'll have more on their special relationship when we come back. A mother who helped her daughter overcome early challenges is now receiving that same support.
CTV's Adam Sawatsky has more on the pair inspiring each other to succeed.
To appreciate how Charlotte Friend ended up painting unexpectedly,
I had picked up a paintbrush out of sheer boredom.
we need to go back to when she began raising her baby girl Becca optimistically.
She was awesome, and it was number 2, and I knew what I was doing, I thought.
Until Becca's struggles with walking led to her being diagnosed with a mild form of cerebral palsy, which felt devastating.
And I wasn't sure that we, as parents, would be equal to the task or what her future would look like.
But despite Becca's brain processing uniquely, despite the right side of her body moving differently, Charlotte and her husband were committed to help their daughter become the best she could be.
Thankfully, we had a really determined redhead. You don't mess with a redhead.
Charlotte encouraged Becca to face the kids who bullied her for wearing patches and braces with bravery, and attempt everything she wanted to do in and out of the classroom with determination.
You might not be able to do things quite as the other kids do, but you can find your own ways of doing things.
And Becca did, graduating from high school after starring in student plays, earning a university degree before landing a good job, and recently marrying the love of her life.
And I wasn't worried about her in life because I knew she could handle anything.
Which brings us to when Charlotte started painting during the pandemic, despite never having done anything artistic in her life before.
And eventually Rebecca said to me, Mom, you have something. And I said, no, I don't.
But Becca persevered on her behalf, found a venue for Charlotte to display her work, and her mom sold her first few paintings.
I think I've taught my mom to just have faith in yourself. She taught me that, and I kind of give it back to her.
And now Charlotte is a prolific painter, spending her retirement relishing being a professional artist.
But having somebody in your corner saying, you can do this, you know you've got this, is just tremendous.
Like Charlotte was once her daughter's biggest advocate, Becca is now her mom's greatest champion.
She tells me, Mom, I am so proud of you. And that just, I mean, it makes your heart sing.
Adam Sawatsky, CTV News, Victoria.
Oh, great story.
I know. I want to go home and hug my girls right now. That's so lovely. Paint us a picture of the weather today.
It's going to be hot. I mean, we have heat and humidity, so much so around the Golden Horseshoe that we have heat warnings in place. So get out, enjoy the summertime heat, but you have to do it safely when we have heat warnings in place. Heat exhaustion, heat stress, it can sneak up on you very quickly. I guess the good news is it gets cooler midweek, but it comes at a pretty significant price with some active weather on the way. Not a ton in the way of any active weather right now. It's just super hot, a few clouds out there. We're at 26, which is pretty seasonal, but you factor in that humidex and it feels into the 30s, and we are climbing into the 30s with our daytime high as we head into the afternoon. So if you're going to hit up a patio, maybe go out for lunch or a late lunch, really think about adding extra water into that and some sun protection. Now, heading into the day tomorrow, the chance of a spotty shower. It stays nice and warm out there, but heading into Wednesday, the leftovers of Tropical Storm Beryl make their way in, and it is going to be a soggy start to the day. So it's just your heads up to give yourself extra time on your Wednesday morning commute.
All right. Thank you, Jess. And that is CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and the whole team here at CTV News, have a wonderful afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6.